Fantasy, you're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy Focus.
Patience is a virtue, and welcome to the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast on Monday, November 20-something, 25th. Field and Matthew here hanging out. Apologies for those on the live stream that hung tight during the delay, but we are here. We're ready to go. We're ready to make a great content
There was
hour.
a technical delay.
Technical delay, but we are ready to rock.
So, because we air this show, because it's an audio product is what it is. It's a podcast. It's an audio product, but they film us making the audio product for ESPN's YouTube channel, for the ESPN app, for Twitter at Fantasy Focus, and ESPN Fantasy's Facebook page. And one of the four, we won't call out who, but one of the four wasn't ready. Is it currently going? Secret Squirrel?
I'm not sure. I don't think that's really how it works, though. It's not like there's a person on the other side that's hitting a button to make it out of that. There's just some kind of gremlin in the system.
Interesting.
I used to think that
I was going to see if people could guess.
by gremlins. Did you know that, Daniel?
Did you really think that?
I thought they were just little gremlins
I was never
sitting inside of every stoplight that would wait for you to show up to the stoplight and then turn it to green.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I was a naive young man.
My dad used to go up to the stoplight and then snap his fingers as soon as it would turn green. I would be like, how does he do that? But then I realized he was just timing it when he was looking at the other side. He's just a cheater.
He is a wizard.
A little bit. Secret Squirrel, lots to get to today. Of course, we'll recap all of Week 12, but...
You're wearing a T-shirt today, Daniel. That's interesting.
Oh, yes, today I am. Yes.
Today, but at some point in the future...
I've got to wear a three-piece suit.
Three-piece suit. So we'll figure out when...
Do you own a suit? Do you own one piece of one suit?
I own two suits that do not fit me. I'm going to have to get them fitted.
Too small or too large?
They're a little bit too small.
Okay.
I have bulked up, as you can tell, in the off season.
Don't know that I can tell that.
And my arms are pretty big nowadays.
That's a good point, Daniel.
But you know what? Now I'm offended. I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because the fact that you think Daniel looks slender, well, you know what that tells me?
You look
No, I'll tell you
exactly.
No, it's fine. But I wear baggy shirts. That's my secret. But the reason that I'm offended here is what that tells me is that you don't watch the fantasy show on ESPN Plus. Because if you watch the fantasy show on ESPN Plus,
yeah, Daniel's naked
half the time.
Yeah.
So you would know that slender is not an adjective that leaps to mind around Daniel.
I'm full-bodied.
Yeah,
all right.
Big-boned.
Big boned. We use big boned around these parts.
Listen,
right, Daniel?
he's a dad bod without actually being a dad.
I was going to say, Daniel, you really are.
Yeah.
What a terrific dad bod you have.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You should pump out a kid pretty soon.
I'm thinking about it.
I mean,
are you?
I have a dad bod, but I have 5 kids, so it's allowed.
Oh, that's accurate. That's accurate.
We've established.
I have 5 kids.
You have 4 kids.
I have 5. As long as I'm paying for them, I think it's 5 kids.
It's weird that you only have 5 kids, but Beth has 6 kids.
That's correct.
That's a good point.
100% she does.
Rewind.
Fantasy news
from the National Football League.
This is the instant replay.
They are who we thought they were. That's what was going through my mind yesterday as the Browns put up 41 points against the Miami Dolphins in their best performance offensively of the season, Matthew, and they have found their stride. Now, I understand the context
is their stride
of who they're
facing
playing.
Miami every week?
Well,
is that the stride you think?
That was my point, is that I understand it's been not the most difficult schedule stretch that they have faced, but they did it against the Steelers last week. They looked pretty good offensively, and now they've won 3 straight games, which is important. And if you look at their schedule going forward, Matthew, again, who is the imposing matchup? Now, at Pittsburgh next week, home to Cincinnati, at Arizona, home to Baltimore, at Cincinnati. So I think I like at least 3 of those matchups and maybe 5 out of 5. But Baker Mayfield, really good yesterday. 327 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, completed over 70% of his passes. Has he worked his way back into the point where Baker Mayfield could actually be started in 10 or 12 team leagues?
I believe so. It feels like a little too matchup dependent. Now, they play Pittsburgh next week. Right. Now, that game is in Pittsburgh, and everyone's going to be fired up, obviously, after everything.
I don't know why.
Yeah. I would love to get into why, but I believe you actually posted a video on your Twitter feed yesterday that would contribute to it.
Well, I mean, it's not my own video, but yes,
I understand.
Fans in Cleveland were having they enjoyed a new game they created yesterday.
Yeah, they did it was unbelievable. They did a piñata game. Kids.
Someone brought a piñata.
Someone brought a piñata
that was shape and image of Mason Rudolph, the Steelers quarterback, and then another fan grabbed a Steelers helmet and used it to, rather than hitting the piñata with like a bat or a stick, a more conventional weapon, they chose a helmet instead. Not a weapon, but you know what I mean. A more conventional tool.
What you do, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's to break it. So anyway, stay classy, those Cleveland fans. Is that real quickly? Do you think that's a worse? Not to get all high and mighty and moral judgment-y, but in terms of fan behavior, and in fairness, like that group of Cleveland fans does not represent the entire Cleveland fan base.
I don't get too bent out of shape about these kind of things, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
If you so
but I'm just very quickly, I'm very curious, and just in terms of like just outrageous fan behavior, what's worse? This? I mean, again, just sort of given the implications there, or like throwing, or the Eagles fans throwing batteries at Santa Claus, which to me is the most famous poor fan behavior
Santa Claus,
example.
or was it Michael Irvin too, right? Or
they threw it at Michael Irvin as well. I thought it was snowballs. I thought it was snowballs at Michael Irvin, and they cheered when Michael Irvin went down with what was clearly a serious injury. But they also they legit threw batteries at Santa Claus.
I would think, me personally, I feel like it is batteries being thrown at somebody because there is intent to injure there. Yesterday, not that it was necessarily my taste, but it was in their end, the people that were doing it, they were doing it in fun. They were trying to sort of, they were mocking what had happened the week before, and this is sort of rallying. I would just say this, because I know there are probably a lot of people that listen to this podcast from Cleveland, including our own Keith Lipscomb, and in general, as you said, never do these incidents that make a lot of headlines represent a fan base in its totality.
I would agree with that.
Fans are fanatics. A lot of times people are at these events imbibing many a beverage. Many of those beverages include alcohol. I think that the behavior is not to be justified, but I also not dismissed. I just think that, like, I don't get as bent out of shape because I have come to expect atypical behavior at sporting events. Really, I mean, dude, like, just
I get it. I guess I understand your point of view. I guess I just don't like. I don't know. I guess I just don't subscribe to the theory in totality of like, they were drunk idiots. What are you going to do?
I know, I said I'm not excusing it, not tolerating it. It doesn't sort of grind my gears as much and get me as riled up as I think it does a lot of people.
Yeah, no, certainly there'll be other people that make like a lot of hay out of it.
Tomorrow night we'll have, I saw a video over the weekend of, fans fighting in the stands. Like, stuff like this happens frequently at sporting events, unfortunately. So let's pivot right back. And Baker Mayfield, 300-plus passing yards, 3 touchdowns, over 70% completion percentage.
Multiple touchdown passes.
Yep.
Multiple touchdown passes now in 3 straight games here. And so anyway, they're on the road to Pittsburgh. Look, and he had a good game against the Steelers previously. And so I certainly think he's a top 12 guy against Cincinnati, against Arizona, which are 2 of the next 3.
Yep.
At Pittsburgh, 5, At Pittsburgh, I think he's probably a high-end QB2.
Right.
Again, next week is the first week that we have no buys whatsoever.
We have an issue. Yeah, we have an issue.
Yeah, so
there's an issue beyond this.
What's that?
A lot of good quarterbacks right now.
That's right.
So guys, no more buys, as you said. So you're not worrying about Patrick Mahomes being out, but we've got a lot of good quarterbacks now. It's not just Baker Mayfield who's making his strides right now. We'll talk about a guy in just a second doing the same thing in New York. Plus, you might like matchups for someone like Daniel Jones, who has shown himself in good spots to be effective. Jameis Winston had a good day yesterday, fantasy-wise. There are a lot of real good quarterbacks. So I'm encouraged by Baker Mayfield. Is he usable depending on who your other quarterback is? Carson Wentz, Tom Brady, etc. Yes. Is he a must-start in a 10 and 12-team league? No. He'll be sort of right there on that periphery, I think, for me, in terms of top 12 quarterback options.
I would agree, but to me, the most encouraging piece of this is that he played well. He's played well consistently now for a couple of games here. He has done what a good quarterback should do, which is beat up on a bad defense.
Right.
And most importantly, to the extent that you care, and by that I mean fantasy managers, Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, and the running game, Baker Mayfield has helped right this offense enough and sort of right the ship, if you will, and that I think he's a borderline starter, Baker Mayfield is, but it gives you confidence in all the guys that you're starting no matter what.
And I would say the same thing, is that like you feel pretty good now about Odell Beckham Jr. every single week being a guy that you can not just start, because the crater point for Odell was not to where you couldn't use him at all, right? It was just frustrating when he's getting 10 points a week, which you look at other players that have totally cratered this year. Juju Smith-Schuster, for example, even before the injuries, you're like, I can't even play Juju. He might not get you 7 points in a week. Odell is a guy that maybe you're hopeful can get you 15 to 20 every week going forward for the final 5.
And if anyone is watching our live stream, they see the graphic on the screen right now, which says first game over 20 points since week 2. And when you draft somebody that has the dynamic talent of Odell Beckham Jr. in what you expected to be previous coming into the season, a more wide open, a more fantasy friendly offense than he played in New York, it's sort of a shocking stat that Odell Beckham Jr., who usually in the course of his healthy season has 4 or 5 games where he literally wins you the week by himself, and so there's been 2 weeks so far as we got through 12 weeks. But it was encouraging to see he getting into the end zone. And an underrated piece of this here is just how good Jarvis Landry has been.
Yeah, Jarvis Landry has been awesome. He had a monster day yesterday, and we had a lot of conversations about Jarvis coming into the season. And what I sort of maintain, and I think he has shown, he has proven, because I think he actually had to prove it to people, was that he is not merely 8 to 9 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yeah,
right?
No.
He is a vertical threat for the Browns. He's really good in the red zone. He had 2 touchdowns yesterday. Exciting to see him. I think he is, both of these players to me will consistently rank somewhere between, I think top 20 is where they'll be every single week going forward.
Certainly, when you think about the matchup here, there's a bunch of good matchups. Other than Baltimore in Week 16, none of them scare you. Probably after Baltimore, the toughest matchup is next week at Pittsburgh. But again, starting of the fantasy playoffs, Week 14, home to Cincinnati. Week 15 at Arizona.
Yep.
You certainly like both of those.
And you like both the running backs, too, by the way. So you
how
feel
could
good.
you not?
Yeah, I don't know how you couldn't. Nick Chubb rushes for 106 yards and a touchdown yesterday, adds 3 catches for 58 yards. Meanwhile, Kareem Hunt has his first touchdown as a Brown yesterday. He's had at least 11.5 fantasy points in all 3 of his games this season. A little bit concerning that he had just 3 targets yesterday after 17 in his first 2 games. That being said, he's a flex play, right? He is a flex play, and if you look at the state of running backs right now, as happens every other year around this time, it gets really, really, really thin.
But he ultimately had 10 touches in this game, and so it's his 3rd straight game with double-digit touches. And again, as we go to the schedule, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Arizona, Baltimore, Cincinnati, like double-digit touches against any one of those teams with a player that has the talent and upside of Kareem Hunt, yeah, legit flex play, especially when you think about some of the other, you're sifting through some of the other potential options there at flex. You could do much worse than Kareem Hunt at your flex, and you probably have.
The other red-hot team right now in the AFC that sort of come out of nowhere, I'm not talking just about Baltimore. They're red-hot because they're awesome. But the Jets, and the Jets have taken advantage, again, of a schedule. But still, Matthew, Sam Darnold has been awesome over his past 3 games. He has at least 20 fantasy points, and yesterday they just totally take the Raiders to the woodshed. Sam Darnold was awesome. Same question here.
Let's hear it from me, by the way, because, when Patrick Mahomes went down, I was just like, look at Sam Darnold's schedule. You got to pick him up.
You got to pick him up.
Look, everything like that. And then he was terrible for a couple games, and I sort of bailed on him.
Right.
But then now
you
basically,
reverse-jinxed him.
Right, I reverse jinxed him. That's exactly what I did. And so initially I thought, I guess I was wrong when I said pick him up. But I actually was wrong when I said, no, get rid of him. So if you ignore the middle part where I said get rid of him and where I said, pick him up, look at his upcoming schedule at the end of the season, he's going to be awesome. And then after he stunk for a little while and I was just like, maybe I'm back in.
You know what, though?
Yeah, so there you go.
Hold on,
if you just take out that middle part, then kudos to me for the other 2 sides.
Or maybe you had this right all along, because there is a certain cross-section of people that follow this show, listen to the podcast, follow us on the social mediums, and they say things to the effect of, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So your lack of confidence in us was rewarded in Sam Darnold's backwards production over the past 4 weeks. All's well that ends well, though, for Sam
there you
Darnold.
Go. You're welcome, America. There you go.
You're welcome. He has been really good. So the same question applies to Darnold as it did to Mayfield. And the question is, should he be started in 10 or 12 team leagues this week, or I guess for the rest of the season? And I think, Matthew, over the next 2 weeks, I feel really, really good about Sam Darnold.
Well, we've been talking about the schedule for a couple of weeks now, and after the Ghost game, obviously there were some concerns here, but he's done what a solid quarterback should do, which is what we just talked about, right? Same with Baker. He's beaten up on some bad teams, and then at Cincinnati this week, home to Miami. Now, it gets a little bit dicier after that. So you've got 2 weeks there, and then at Baltimore, home to Pittsburgh, at Buffalo. So it's a little bit of a weird thing in that I think Sam Darnold can help you get to the fantasy playoffs and get through the first round. But in the semifinals, in Week 15, are you starting Sam Darnold on the road at Baltimore, assuming everything's the same? Assuming he has 2 good games and that there's no major injuries on the Baltimore defensive side.
No, I am not. I'm certainly going to be looking elsewhere, but then this might be so simple as that, like, if you're picking up Sam Darnold right now, it's most likely because you have another quarterback that you're not implicitly confident in, either for Week 13 or just in general. So if it's more because if it's a Week 13 concern, well, then ride out whoever that normal quarterback is in Week 15, or just prepare yourself to play the matchups. And again, as I was saying at the top of the show, there's so many good quarterbacks right now that it's totally possible that you could stream a quarterback. Maybe it's a 2-week stream at a time, like Darnold, 2 weeks for him, and then maybe 2 weeks for somebody else who has a good matchup in Week 15.
And the nice thing is
if
that
you're still playing in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean in Week 15, if you get there, right, part of the goal is just get there, and you'll figure it out when you get there. So you get there in Week 15. And in theory, that's the semifinals in most leagues. So it's probably you and just a couple of other teams that are competing. You know, if you're playing the quarterback waiver wire game, the streaming game, and chances are some of the other teams in your league are not doing that they have whoever else, Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, and they're in the playoffs, they're not streaming somebody else.
Correct.
So there should be some less competition there. And so maybe you grab somebody else there. Maybe you grab a Ryan Tannehill, who we'll talk about.
Ryan Tannehill. Talking about him in just a little bit. Again, part of this good quarterback class that has grown over the past few weeks.
3 straight games of over 20 fantasy points for Sam Darnold. He's the only quarterback to have scored 21 fantasy points in each of the last 3 weeks. The only quarterback this entire year with a longer streak.
Lamar Jackson?
Lamar Jackson.
How about that?
I mean,
Lamar
it just
plays tonight.
It's been crazy. And the other thing is that, do you just chalk this up to sort of, game flow and they got it big, but as well as Sam Darnold played yesterday, kind of a dud for Jamison Crowder, which I was surprised about. Given the matchup with Oakland, and Crowder was somebody that I liked going into that game, and just didn't seem to connect with him. They got Robbie Anderson going, which was great, and I would assume
Ryan Griffin scored a touchdown.
Yeah, Ryan Griffin scored another touchdown. I assume both Griffin and Anderson make the free agent fines column this week.
They do. Robbie Anderson has dipped below 50%. He's at like 46.3%. So Robbie Anderson, Ryan Griffin, Sam Darnold all make the waiver wire column. Not a super strong week for waiver wires, but that being said, all 3 Jets do make the column given their schedule for the next 2 weeks.
So my question to you, any concern on Jamison Crowder? Just a blip, or is this sort of like, oh, well, Anderson coming along?
More of a blip. More of a blip.
I agree.
Yeah. Demaryius Thomas had a touchdown as well for the Jets yesterday. Let's talk about players who don't have good quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold at their disposal, including Tyler Boyd and Allen Robinson. Squeaky Wheel got the grease in Cincy as Tyler Boyd had a big game yesterday for the Bengals, in spite of Ryan Finley, who has just been awful for the Bengals for much of his starting tenure so far this year. 5 catches for 101 yards, puts a touchdown for Tyler Boyd. He did lose a fumble yesterday, but still good enough for 19.1 fantasy points. Meanwhile, A-Rob goes for 6 for 131 plus a touchdown, which means 25.1 fantasy points for Robinson, who started in just 60% of leagues. Start of something good here, or is this just when you have a really talented wide receiver with really average quarterback or maybe even below average quarterback play, you have to ride the wave and expect that you're going to have some ruts and you're going to have some swells. Peaks and ruts. That works.
And ruts. Peaks and valleys.
That also works. Yeah.
Ruts and swells, peaks and valleys.
Ruts and swells. That's what I was looking for.
Ruts and mountains.
Ruts and mountains.
Yeah. Hills and dips.
Swells,
hills and dips.
Hills and dips.
Highs and lows.
Peaks, highs and lows.
Yeah.
Peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
Matthews and Fields.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Those
I don't
ones.
understand that one.
Yeah. Well,
you're old and I'm young.
Field.
Oh. Age, beauty,
knowledge.
And what kind of stuff?
Popularity with the fans.
What kind of stuff do you have knowledge on?
We talked about this actually over the weekend.
We did.
So Daniel had a axe throwing birthday party.
I know. Thanks for the invite.
You were in Boston.
No, I wasn't.
Where were you at?
Connecticut.
With your sisters,
with your wife.
No, I was in New York. I was in New York.
Okay.
At Paige's engagement party.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Congratulations, Paige and CP. Engagement party in the books.
And the photos on Instagram look lovely.
Well, thank you.
You guys had a good time.
I did have a good time. It was very nice.
So there you go. Congratulations
nice
to Paige and CP. But yeah, so anyway, Secret Squirrel celebrated a birthday. He had a party with a group of friends, and we went axe throwing. Which, by the way, was surprisingly fun. We had a good time.
I'm not surprised.
Also,
by that,
just as surprisingly, Matthew was like pretty good at it.
Okay.
Like,
So where does this all lead to? Are you gonna?
someone asked him what things he's knowledgeable at.
Yeah. Because I was we were having dinner afterwards, and I forget how it came up, but I just said something to the effect of, like, I said, look, there's only 3 things in this world that I know, but this is one of them. And so our mutual friend Jeremy said to me, "What are those 3 things?"
Let me guess.
What are those 3 things?
Fantasy football.
Yep, that was one of them.
Number 2.
What do I know about?
Like 90s movies or just like movies in general?
Nope.
Okay.
I have a reasonably good pop culture knowledge, but I didn't put it. I'm sorry.
Tuitions?
No,
Tuition.
I've learned about 2 of them. That's for
Local
sure.
geriatrics in Connecticut?
Not yet. I'm not there yet. Just yet.
Okay. I don't know then.
I said writing. I said I'm not only, I think I'm a pretty good writer, and I think more importantly I understand writing.
I think so
I
too,
understand
yeah.
like sort of how to structure things. I'm pretty good at sort of structure and narratives and
Right. I agree.
So doing that. So that was the other thing. And
That was 2.
Yeah. And do I reveal the 3rd one? I feel like that's going to
No,
get
I
me in
think we're
trouble a
good.
little bit.
Yeah, I think we're good with those 2.
Right. I'll tell you the 3rd one off air.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's
No,
like
it's not. It's by the way, and for anyone that think it's certainly not.
It's not anything-
inappropriate.
no,
It's
not at all.
It's nothing inappropriate. It has to do with. It has to do with.
basket weaving. We'll
It
talk
has to
about
do
it
with.
later.
It has to do with work and ESPN. I'll just leave
Got
it at
it. Okay. Sounds good.
that. So we'll just yeah. So anyway, I don't even know where we got on that tangent. Secret Squirrel, any help?
Peaks and valleys, hills
Peaks
and
valleys.
mountains.
Oh yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yes.
Matthew and Fields.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. Our listeners would love it if we started talking about football again.
I'm
though.
sure they would. So let's talk about do
Tyler
you
Boyd
so
and
my
Allen
question
Robinson.
my question is that I think they are wide receiver 3s that have wide receiver 1-2 upside in the right matchup. So Tyler Boyd this week, home to the Jets, at Cleveland. Those are the next 2 weeks. Like those matchups.
Yeah.
Then in week 15 he plays home to New England. You're benching Tyler Boyd against the Patriots. Right?
Just a thought. Yeah.
But week 16 at Miami. Week 17 home to Cleveland. So
Yeah,
honestly,
4 to 5 really solid matchups there. For
we feel
Tyler
good
Boyd.
about Tyler Boyd. You also, and we'll see if AJ Green ever comes back. But Auden Tate,
No.
You
No.
don't think? You
No.
think he's done?
Like
You think he's done? No way. He's not coming back.
my question is who he plays for in 2020. That's my
Yeah.
real question.
So maybe Auden Tate had the concussion, was active for this
Yep.
game, not really involved, just got a
One
limited
catch
practice
for
in
1
front.
yard, I believe. For 10 yards.
10
I
yards,
believe.
yeah,
yes. Yep.
So, and then you think about Allen Robinson, and I think Allen Robinson is in a better situation than Tyler Boyd.
Yep.
For all the jokes and struggles that Mitchell Trubisky has had, I think he's a better quarterback and more polished at this point than Ryan Finley. I have actually more
Yes.
confidence in Allen Robinson than Tyler Boyd going forward. His schedule's not as good, but it's not one that like freaks you out. At Detroit, home to Dallas, which has been up and down.
Yep.
At Green Bay,
Yep.
home to Kansas City, at Minnesota. Not one. I mean, there's not one like cupcake Miami defense matchup there, but there's not one where you go like, oh boy, I'm benching Allen Robinson against those guys.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way about Allen. I think Allen Robinson's a better player than Tyler Boyd. I think his quarterback is better. I just think that the matchups are less solid. So again, to your point, matchup dependent wide receiver 1.5s.
Fair enough.
That over the course of the season will be more likely to be flex plays because of the inconsistent quarterback play.
Yeah. Wide receiver 3s with some upside.
We're going to come back and talk about Carson Wentz and his struggles in just a moment. But first, hiring can be a slow process. Cafe Altura's COO, Dylan Miskowitz, needed to hire a director of coffee for his organic coffee company because he's having trouble finding qualified applicants. So he switched to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its technology identifies people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job to get a qualified candidate fast. Dylan posted his job on ZipRecruiter and said he was impressed by how quickly he had great candidates apply. He also used ZipRecruiter's candidate rating feature to filter his applicants, so he could focus on the most relevant ones. And that's how Dylan found his new director of coffee in just a few days. With results like that, it's no wonder 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See why ZipRecruiter is effective for businesses of all sizes. Try ZipRecruiter for free at our web address, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010. One more time, all the way there for those in the back, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. I got a friend who researches, actually he's now a segment producer for Get Up and other shows. His name is Paul Hembakidis.
Hembo.
I think is just at Paul Hembo on Twitter, and he posted a thread today of a screenshot of all of Carson Wentz's throws, or many of his throws, and the ball placement. Not exactly a particularly inspiring thread. Carson Wentz has been brutal for 5 games. He left Sunday's game with his throwing hand heavily wrapped. We are talking about Carson Wentz, or we came into the season talking about Carson Wentz as potentially a player that could have a Patrick Mahomes light type season from last year.
I mean, look, Louis Riddick, I'm not trying to call him out because I think Louis Riddick is as smart a guy as we have in the building. Like, I'm a big Lou Riddick fan, but, Lou very famously was like, Carson Wentz will win the MVP this season. And I mean, and Lou, to his credit, has already sort of copped to that call not going the way he expected, or the Eagles, right? He's already been public about that. So he's been a massive disappointment to fantasy players, to NFL executives, to fans of the Eagles, to the Eagles themselves, who invested millions upon
$5 million.
I mean,
it's been a tough year so far for NFC East quarterbacks. Dak Prescott notwithstanding, but he leaves the game yesterday, Matthew, and he's rostered 82% of leagues. Does that need to be like 28% of leagues now, or even 8.2% of leagues? Like, is there any reason to continue to roster Carson Wentz for all that we've seen so far with the hand injury?
Yes.
Because of the schedule?
2 words.
Miami Dolphins?
At Miami.
Yeah.
That's
so
next week's game against the Philadelphia Eagles.
By the way, we are finally at the portion of the season where I feel really comfortable, like talking about every matchup left on someone's schedule. 5 weeks left, 1 to clinch the playoffs, and 3 in the playoffs, or 4 in the playoffs. At Miami, home to the Giants. At the Redskins, home to Dallas. At the Giants, nothing scares you there except for the wide receivers and the Eagles. What do you got, Daniel?
I have a question about this. Okay, so understanding that you're saying he is worth rostering still, are you actually playing him against Miami over other quarterbacks, as in he will be a top 10 quarterback for you, or do you just not want to put him out on the waiver wire for someone else to be able to pick up and use?
A little bit of defense, but I would say is this week, depending on who's available in my league, like I would say going into this week, I would be playing Sam Darnold over him. Baker Mayfield maybe over him. But let's say you play in a deeper league, a more aggressive with quarterbacks league, where the best available option is not one of those 2 guys or Ryan Tannehill.
See,
I'm okay with it.
See, I haven't decided yet, and I'll tell you why. Because there's 3 things.
The hand?
It's not just the hand. Obviously, that makes a big difference here. But Alshon Jeffrey,
yep.
Nelson Aguilar, are those guys playing? That would be helpful. And Lane Johnson.
That's fair.
So we talked about this on Fantasy Football Now Sunday morning. I don't know if you guys missed this, but the fact is that once we knew Lane Johnson wasn't going to play, is that if you look at the numbers when Lane Johnson is out of the lineup, it is a stark difference for Carson Wentz. And we talked about
how I pushed back on that.
Huh?
I pushed back on that because
a little bit.
Up until yesterday,
it
was almost exclusively his rookie year.
Sure.
Which I think is a very different snapshot of where we are now. But that rookie year snapshot picked up yesterday.
It did, and even going back to last week's game. So last week, Lane Johnson leaves that game early, and after the game, after Lane Johnson leaves the game last week, 5 sacks. Carson Wentz takes 5 sacks.
Yep.
He completes less than 40% of his passes. Like, the production just immediately fell off, and then you saw what he did yesterday, right? 256 yards, 2 interceptions. He lost at least 1 fumble. He lost 2 fumbles. I'm sorry. He lost 2 fumbles. He actually fumbled 3 times. He lost 2. So 4 turnovers for Carson Wentz. And, he was just, from the eye test, he didn't look like a franchise quarterback.
No, he had a tough day yesterday. Again, context is really important in quarterback play. The offensive line was not just without Lane Johnson, but Brandon Brooks, regarded by many as the best guard in football, left yesterday's game, and he admitted, he posted this morning on Twitter, he's had significant anxiety issues in the past, and they bubbled up yesterday. And unfortunately for him, he could not finish the game. Andre Dillard, their first-round pick, who stepped in for Lane Johnson, was also, Doug Peterson's not calling it a benching, he's calling it a coach's decision, basically, but he was benched as well. So, yeah, there were 3 key players along the offensive line that did not play in that game yesterday in the second half when a lot of the damage was done against Carson Wentz. I understand those 3 guys, Matthew. Yeah. I think that's fair to point them out. My early look, put it this way, understanding there's a possibility that Lane Johnson and Nelson Aguilar and Alshon Jeffrey won't be available on Sunday. Tomorrow night when waivers roll, I would unquestionably be adding another quarterback.
Which is fair. And honestly, the only reason I'm entertaining any of this is because at Miami.
Right.
They're playing any other team in the NFL, with the exception of maybe Cincinnati. You're kind of like,
Totally.
But yeah, so it's certainly one. I understand the thought process there, and I don't disagree with it, that you would like to have another option. If Carson Wentz is your only quarterback, you obviously need more help.
Agreed on that. We're going to come back and talk about all the backfields that have either struggling players or a lot of players. They're very confusing, including the Eagles. But first, a word from our friends, led by this guy, the very intelligent Matthew Berry.
Time now for our daily reminder to don't be this guy. Today's submission comes from RDT. The loser in his fantasy league every year has to rock a license plate holder that says, quote, "I finished last in my fantasy football league," and keep it on their car all year long. Secret Squirrel, you lost the league last year.
Okay.
And we made you get a tattoo.
Yeah.
This seems like this would have been a lot easier.
This is weak sauce right here, Matthew. I got to be honest about that.
Yeah, he should have had the license plate tattooed on him.
On his belly like a stupid idiot.
Fantasy, you're in the whole 6010 focus. Fantasy.
I made a comment earlier on in the show just about how thin running backs get at this point of the year, because it's every year around this time that we talk about it. And I was mentioning it in the context of Kareem Hunt. Yesterday was a perfect illustration of just how barren it is in terms of star running backs. For the Eagles, for example.
And what's amazing to me is that in addition to, there's a handful of star running backs that were drafted and have performed as such.
Yeah.
Right? The McCaffrey, the Dalvin Cooks, the Kamaras, the Fournettes, Derrick Henry.
Yep.
Right? So there's maybe 10. Maybe you get to 10.
Yep.
But then, usually there is, so you usually have a mixture of the studs you drafted that have rocked, and then guys that have emerged. No one has emerged. You know what I mean? And no one has emerged waiver wire wise. And then you've got the usual, percentage of disappointments that were drafted either due to injury or, underperformance.
Crowdsourcing. Who's the best waiver wire pickup amongst running backs? Crowdsourcing that one. Don't need to answer the question right now, but a guy that's actually maintained status throughout the year, the answer is there isn't a DJ Chark amongst running backs this year. At least not that comes to mind right away.
No.
Let's get through these then sort of one by one, Matthew. For Philly, we just talked about them with Carson Wentz. And yesterday, no Jordan Howard again. Jay Ajayi gets in the mix. Miles Sanders gets 15 touches, and he gets you just 11.6 fantasy points, Matthew. That's one of the players who I would say also comes to mind as a preseason missed forecast. Oh, yeah, bust.
People were, I was in drafts. The hype on Miles Sanders got crazy, and I never bought it in the biggest way. I was actually much more of a Jordan Howard proponent in the preseason.
Yep.
I had plenty of misses in the preseason. Make no mistake. This is not me trying to, get by that. But in this particular case, I was more of a Jordan Howard. I was like, guys, Jordan Howard's going to be involved, and he's going way, way later than Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders, for whatever reason, it just hasn't clicked, whether it's, the tendency to bounce outside a little bit, that they haven't used him the right way necessarily, that they haven't that they haven't committed to him in a big way that, Jordan Howard's been getting up until he got hurt. Jordan Howard was getting the majority of the red zone and goal line work. For whatever reason, it just hasn't been put together fantasy-wise for Miles Sanders.
Yeah, it really hasn't. I think going forward, until Jordan Howard returns, which at this point he still hasn't been cleared for contact, so we have no guarantee, even in a matchup that you like this week at Miami and perhaps a little bit of revenge on the mind of Jay Ajayi, it's hard for me to say that Miles Sanders.
I forgot about that. Revenge Street narrative.
We got a lot of good narrative. I'm actually really excited about this weekend ahead. Miles Sanders, though, Matthew, I think just because of the matchup, a flex consideration, but beyond that, until Jordan Howard returns, he's a low-end flex consideration, and Jay Ajayi is if you're super desperate and you hope he falls into the end zone. Fair?
Yeah, it is. He got, Jay Ajayi. Listen, it was a lost game for them, and they just couldn't get anything going, but 6 carries for Jay Ajayi. Miles Sanders gets 15 touches, just doesn't do anything with them.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
The whole offense was just, stuck in the mud here, bad offensive line, couldn't get anything going in the passing game, so they're not really worried about that, defensively. Hopefully things get better against Miami. We have seen offenses that were struggling suddenly turn around and everything looks good once they play the Miami Dolphins. The Browns just the most recent example.
So yesterday, James Conner sits for the Steelers, shoulder injury. I know this one's going to be frustrating as heck, not just for you, but for many out there. Jaylen Samuels, we thought was.
I would love to hear this from people listening. Sorry, I interrupted you, but I would I'm so never again on a Pittsburgh running back. This has been such an annoying, frustrating season as somebody that has James Conner. I had Jaylen Samuels. I had Benny Snell. I've had trying to figure this out. It's been just a disaster.
You feel like there's a situation where it's hey, cool, these guys are set up in a position to be able to really succeed, especially going into the fantasy playoffs. And then it's just heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak with them.
It's really, and so they've got, maybe we should have seen the writing on the wall, Matthew. And I don't mean that as if we should have expected yesterday to be a total disaster.
Right.
But this offseason, despite the fact that they got good production from James Conner last year, and they got good fill-in production from Jaylen Samuels this past year, as in when he filled in for James Conner late in 2018.
Sure.
They drafted Benny Snell in the 4th round out of Kentucky. And it's why did they draft a guy who's pretty good in the 4th round, right? Because apparently they're just not totally convinced that any one of these guys needs to be the lead ball carrier, right?
Yeah, in the offseason, there was a narrative there that, this is going to be a running back by committee, and then that seemed to subside, and the Steelers were like, no, this is going to be the James Conner show, and it was for a while.
Yeah.
But the problem is that and listen, I don't mean to be dismissive of a guy who beat cancer. Make no mistake, James Conner is about 1 million times tougher than I am. Sure. I get a hangnail and I'm out for 3 weeks. But it does seem Field, that every single time James Conner plays in a game, he's leaving early due to injury, just getting nicked up every which way, and different injuries, the shoulder, the ankle, it's all a bunch of different things. And then so that's been very frustrating. And I don't know that goes away. That's a better Stefania question if he's just been very unlucky or if he is injury prone. But so far, early returns on James Conner, who missed time last year with injury as well. It feels like he's just a injury-prone guy. And then, Jaylen Samuels, who I got no answer. I have no answer for. I recommended Jaylen Samuels coming into this game. I thought he would be involved in the passing game. We knew that you'd see some you'd see some Benny Snell, and you'd see. I'm sure that kid got called that as a
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Right. Probably for about
I think once. He laughed last, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I would just say, Benny Snell is a tough kid. I got a feeling somebody called him Benny Smell once. Anyway, but came out of nowhere, and by the way, then it was White, the
Kareth White. Yes.
Kareth White from what was the practice squad he was signed off of?
From the Bears.
The Bears
Kareth
practice
White
squad
from Florida Atlantic. I know my guy Keith remembers that one from the Owls. You know that one, Keith? You had that one?
A teammate of
Devin Singletary.
Singletary.
Right. So they had some explosive players in that backfield. But yes, he got 6 carries yesterday. Bottom line here, Matthew, was this. I view, and you can just tell me if you disagree, and if not, we'll move on. Until James Conner returns, okay? Which we don't know when that will be.
Yeah.
Shoulder injury, it could be very fickle week to week. Benny Snell, touchdown-dependent flex play.
Agreed.
Jaylen Samuels is a game flow-dependent flex play.
In PPR only.
Yes, in PPR only. Yep.
I agree. And in an ideal world, you're not starting any of these guys until James Conner comes back again. Right. They're home to Cleveland next week. The frustrating thing is the next 2 weeks, home to Cleveland, not a matchup that scares you, and then at Arizona.
It should be good. But
it should be good.
Have not aligned in that regard.
And so we'll get into waivers tomorrow, but where is Benny Snell on your pickups?
It's a week. I think he's at 5th amongst my waivers. And again, I'm leaning a little bit more quarterback heavy, even though I'm also telling you quarterbacks, we got so many of them that you don't necessarily need to add them. All right, let's get to the Bears. Super disappointing, Matthew. David Montgomery, 13 carries for a total of 22 yards plus 2 catches for 9 yards. I'm out. And with that, if he was a Shark Tank proposal to us, I'm out without even hearing the whole pitch.
I'm with you. I feel like David Montgomery's nickname should be Fetch. Fetch.
Matthew, quit trying to make David Montgomery happen.
Exactly.
Hey, well done. That was good. I get it.
That's exactly right. His nickname is Fetch. Is Fetch. And I say this to the fantasy community because I've never been the biggest David Montgomery guy. There are other people out there that have been much more bigger proponents of David Montgomery.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I had him ranked highest of the Bears running backs, but I wasn't, in my overall ranks, I had him much lower than the consensus here. So I've never been as big a guy as some of the others. I thought there was going to be more of a committee. I didn't think they would fall off the map the way I have, the Bears offense. But listen, his nickname is Fetch. I'm saying this to everyone. I'm saying this to fantasy managers. I'm saying this to the entire fantasy community. Stop trying to make Fetch happen. Stop trying to make David Montgomery happen. Fetch Montgomery. I'm sorry. I'm out on this Bears offense. To me, the only guy that you can start with any confidence is Allen Robinson. It was nice to see Mitchell Trubisky be useful yesterday.
It was, yes.
2-quarterback league. Useful is what Mitch Trubisky is in the right matchup. They're at Detroit next week. Doesn't really scare you. Home to Dallas. Don't love that. At Green Bay. I'm not sure I want that. Home to Kansas City. At Minnesota. I don't know. It would be tough for me. Tariq Cohen is sort of like a, cross your fingers and hope flex.
Yeah.
In certain weeks. But the only Chicago Bear that you can start with any sort of confidence is Allen Robinson.
Agreed on that. Let's get moving to the Falcons, who yesterday had another Brian Hill-led offensive output, but there really wasn't much there for Brian Hill, who finishes with just 5.7 fantasy points. Not enough passing game upside, not enough juice in the running game for me to feel like Brian Hill is anything more than a deep league flex consideration.
Not even that. 9 carries for 14 yards, 1.6. He averaged 1.6 yards per carry, down from the 2 yards per carry he averaged last week. Kadri Allison gets the goal line carry, which is the second week in a row that he sort of vultured Brian Hill. Now, Brian Hill did get one late in the game last week that ended up getting called back due to penalty, but Kadri Allison, to the extent that anyone was effective, I mean, he got 8 carries for 20 yards. He averaged 2.5 yards per carry, as opposed to Brian Hill's 9 for 14. Both guys, Brian Hill was involved a little bit in the passing game, 3 for 13. Kadri Allison, 1 for 7. To me, the bigger story on Brian Hill, the Falcons, we can get into this, was Matt Ryan.
Yeah, it was a stinker for Matt Ryan. We'll talk about
another
that more.
one.
Yeah, another stinker for Matt Ryan. But let's keep it going with the backfields here,
So
Matthew,
anyway,
just because
to me,
there's a lot of crowded spaces here.
Yeah, by the way, Saints, Panthers, at San Francisco, Jacksonville, drop Brian Hill. Devontae Freeman will be back at some point. You're never starting Brian Hill again.
The Seahawks have an interesting
imagine.
problem here. Interesting in the sense that Rashad Penny, their first-round pick last year, had his best game as a pro, at least one of them yesterday. Ripped off a big, long run. He played 5 fewer snaps than Chris Carson. And the worrisome part for Carson is not just that Penny played well, it's that he fumbled again. He actually fumbled on consecutive plays, recovered his own fumble the first time. The very next play, he fumbles it again, and the ball is out. It belongs to Philadelphia. Fumbles have been a problem for Chris Carson. The team has remained so defiant, though, and he is going to continue to be our guy. Was there a changing of the guard yesterday in Seattle?
Yeah, but I feel like yes and no.
Okay.
I'm talking to both sides of my mouth now for a moment, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, yes, there was a changing of the guard in this sense.
Okay.
That there is a big uptick in value for Rashad Penny and a downtick in value for Chris Carson.
Yep.
But I felt like yesterday was more about Chris Carson's value than Rashad Penny's, because Chris Carson's not going away. I don't believe that, even though Rashad Penny looked great yesterday, I don't believe that Pete Carroll and the way this offense runs, that all of a sudden Chris Carson's sitting on the sideline holding a clipboard and Rashad Penny gets 25 touches. I believe, but what went from probably an 80-20 split between Carson and Penny coming into this game, might have been 85-15, might be now more 50-50.
Yeah, I think so too.
That is my take. We'll see how the practice reports come. We'll see, we'll see what Brady Henderson, who covers the team for us and does a great job. We'll see what sort of the week brings. But as I sit here today, they love Chris Carson, and tough game. I get it with the fumbles, and Rashad Penny looked great. But we've seen this before. Chris Carson has had a tough game. Rashad Penny has come in, looked great, and they've gone right back to Chris Carson.
Yeah.
I think you listen to Pete Carroll's comments after the game, and he talked about the fact just how Penny looked like he was shot out of a cannon. And they used a first-round pick on this guy. So they do like him quite a bit. I just feel like yesterday was more about the devaluing of Chris Carson than it was about suddenly Rashad Penny is the starter and the running back you want in Seattle.
Yeah, agreed on that. And speaking of backfield, we think we have a player that we want. It's Bo Scarborough and the Lions. But, Matthew, I don't know if he's even an RB2, right? He's so carry dependent. 18 carries for 98 yards. He lost a fumble yesterday, so 7.8 fantasy points, 0 catches in 2 games as being the guy in Detroit. And This offense has really stuck in the mud right now. They play on Thursday. Not trying to throw salt in the wounds, Daniel. They play Chicago on Thursday. Is there even any value here for Bo Scarborough?
Only in the deepest of leagues. Like, he's getting a lot of work. He's been productive in the 2 games that he's gotten a lot of work. And so, like, a starting running back in the NFL, somebody that's going to get between, 15 and 20 touches in a game has value.
Yep.
He has value. All that said, upcoming schedule, you mentioned it, short week where they got to play the Bears on Thanksgiving. Then they're at Minnesota, home to Tampa Bay, at Denver, and then home to Green Bay. Like 4 really good run defenses in a row. Bears, Vikings, Bucks, Broncos.
Yeah.
You don't feel great about Bo Scarborough, who's not involved in the passing game, who's on an offense led by Jeff Driscoll, which couldn't even beat my Redskins. We'll talk about that in 1 second.
To be fair.
I mean, like, I think Bo Scarborough is more of a, he's like a deeper league flex.
Deeper league flex. It's touchdown dependent, especially if you play in non-PPR scoring. All right. We've teased it a couple of times about how Ryan Tannehill is playing.
Wait, before we get there, since we're just on Bo Scarborough, we're going to talk 1 second. Your thoughts real quickly on Redskins-Lions.
It was terrible. Everything about it was brutal. I didn't like any of it, other than the fact that you guys hurt yourself from a draft position.
Yeah.
So I'm taking that away as a victory for us.
We can't even tank right.
Yeah,
I wanted us to lose. I was excited because I'm like, oh, good. Lions are going to win by a field goal. I'm going to win this bet.
Yep.
Because it was
you were still going to lose,
favorite.
and yeah,
That's what I wanted. I wanted the Redskins to lose the game, but I would win the bet against you because they would cover the 3.5. And of course, unfortunately, that just didn't happen. My stupid Redskins decided to win the game.
We're coming for that number 1 pick, Matthew Berry.
No, it's going to be the Bengals. But I think the Redskins cost themselves a couple of spots in the draft, moving from like 2 to. They're probably in the 4 or 5 range now, and they're all excited. And it's just like, we can't even tank right.
I will say this really quickly.
We can't even tank right.
Really quickly, and I do mean this, because I know we got to keep moving, but Terry McLaurin put a number of moves on Darius Slay. That kid is going to be a really good wide receiver if Dwayne Haskins can learn how to have any kind of accuracy on his deep ball.
Terry McLaurin is so special, such an amazing player and route runner and kid. Like, I love that kid, and it was so frustrating because I have McLaurin in a couple leagues where I had to start him due to sort of buys, even though he was on the hate list, and yet like he was wide open in the end zone, multiple plays, and Dwayne Haskins just it wasn't a tough throw. Like one of them was a fade into the corner, which was a little bit tougher, but like one of them was literally just a crossing route that just is the most basic throw a quarterback can make, and he overthrew him by 5 feet. Did you see that play?
Oh, I saw it. I'm aware of what you're talking about. It was a tough day at the office.
And he still finished with 5 for 72, Terry McLaurin. And so,
but he should have had 2 touchdowns there. He should have.
I mean, Haskins too busy taking selfies. Like, what are you doing? Come on, Dwayne.
That was my favorite story.
What?
Kenny, our video producer, just said that was his favorite story of the season of Dwayne Haskins taking selfies on the sideline.
Taking selfies with fans on the sideline. I mean, listen, he's fan friendly. He's trying to reach out. And anyway, what a disaster. But the Redskins win. I don't know.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Talk to me about Ryan Tannehill.
Ryan Tannehill had another good day there for the Tennessee Titans. He's 4-1 in his 5 starts, Matthew. He has been rock solid of late. Should Ryan Tannehill be on the streaming quarterback radar? He has been unbelievable.
Field, since week 7, he is the 3rd best quarterback in fantasy on a per-game basis.
Yeah.
He's a top 3 fantasy quarterback. He's got over 18.5 fantasy points in 5 straight games. Lamar Jackson, the only quarterback with a streak that long this season. 5 games of 18.5 fantasy points.
Incredible.
Ryan Tannehill's been with every waking moment, you're like, good God, Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. He has put them right back into the playoff conversation. He has put himself amongst the most intriguing quarterbacks for 2020 in the free agent class, Matthew. He's played really well, accounted for multiple touchdowns in each of his 5 starts. And again, I'll reiterate the same point from earlier. There are a lot of good quarterbacks right now. So, yes, he is on the radar, and certainly depending on the matchup, you might feel good about starting Ryan Tannehill. It's a little bit different, though. Like his upcoming matchups are
tougher. I mean, he's home to Minnesota, which is not. I mean, this is the wrong schedule.
Ryan Tannehill, he's not home. He plays. Pull it up. They play the Colts this weekend.
Okay.
So they play the Colts on Sunday in Indianapolis. They've got a very heavy divisional schedule going forward. So, but they, I think, are in a position to make a late playoff run. So depending upon the matchup, though, Matthew, do you like here's
our upcoming schedule. You were absolutely right. They're at the Colts, then at the Raiders.
Yep.
Home to the Texans.
Yep.
Home to the Saints.
Yep.
At the Texans. So it's actually a pretty good schedule. Right. I mean, the Colts in their zone defense are, I think, tougher than they get credit for, but you're not scared of going to the Raiders. Like, it's not a great matchup, but it's not a terrible matchup playing in the black hole. That'll be a little bit tough. But 2 games against the Texans, that's a defense that's obviously struggled. You would expect home against the Saints. That potentially is a shootout here. So top 12-ish quarterback, I mean, which would be better based on the schedule and certain matchups, but you like the fact that he also gets you something with his legs, which he always has, even in Miami.
3 rushing touchdowns in 5 games for Ryan Tannehill. He's been solid.
He has been.
And along with that, A.J. Brown's been solid for them. And this is one that's really tough for me, Matthew, because A.J. Brown pops, right? Like every time you watch him, you're like, this kid has a chance to be special. 65-yard receiving touchdown yesterday.
I was just going to say, if you go back to he was my favorite wide receiver coming out of college. If you go back to sort of the pre-draft, the post-combine pre-NFL draft podcast that we did, I talked about the fact that I couldn't wait to see where A.J. Brown went because he was my favorite rookie wide receiver coming into the NFL. And then he goes to Tennessee, and you're like, well, there goes that. But he's been everything that you expect and hope for. He's been great.
He's been awesome. He's been rock solid for them. Now, here's where I think the play is. I think you add him and you stash him. And I know there's only 5 weeks left, so what are you stashing somebody for? The 4 for 135 and a touchdown yesterday shows you what the upside is. The problem is there have been other games where over his last 6 games, Matthew, he's got 2 catches or fewer in 3 of them, right? So he's still a little bit Jekyll and Hyde. This might be one where if you feel really good about his matchup, but feel not so good about your matchup in the playoffs, you might swing for the fences.
Yeah, 1 game this season. He's got 1 game this season with more than 4 catches. Yep. He has 4 different games with under 5 fantasy points, right? Thirsty Kyle notes here, 23% of A.J. Brown's fantasy points this year have come on 2 catches. The 65-yard touchdown yesterday and the 55-yard score against the Falcons in Week 4. So a little bit big play dependent. We know that this is an offense. It's certainly risen under Ryan Tannehill, but it is still a run-first offense that revolves around Derrick Henry. And is there enough volume to consistently count on A.J. Brown? A.J. Brown's a hell of a player, and he's the kind of guy that I think next year as they open up this offense, if Ryan Tannehill is back with the Titans, then you could sort of see this. But he's big play dependent. And just with wide receivers as skilled as A.J. Brown is, you just don't feel great about the lack of volume here.
But really excited about the player going forward, and I'm also really excited about Ryan Tannehill going forward. Again, we'll see whether he sticks in Tennessee beyond this season. For now, they're more worried about making the playoffs. We're going to talk about the 49ers in just a moment, Matthew, but first, a word by you on behalf of...
I think it is SeatGeek today.
Yes, it is.
All right. Field, a question for you. You and I have talked about this many, many times. We've gone late into the night discussing this, you and I, over cocoa. We always talk about how ticketing websites make getting to the event difficult on purpose.
It's really tough. I hate it.
Feels like they do. It's as if they're so big they can get away with not caring about the customer experience. Millions of live event tickets and a price match guarantee. SeatGeek proves there is a better way. You can search sports, live music, comedy, and more. SeatGeek has the tickets you're looking for, and it's all in one place. In an industry that tends to stagnate. I always talk about how stagnant this industry is. SeatGeek has decided to stand out from the crowd. They built the fastest way to find tickets, so you can stop searching for the perfect seat and just start enjoying it, which is the whole reason we do any of this. Now, why is SeatGeek better than the rest? SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web, then it rates each deal on a scale of 1 to 10. Finally, SeatGeek displays them on an interactive seat map. SeatGeek breaks down the details. Green dots mean good deals, red dots are overpriced. Pretty simple to understand. Every purchase fully guaranteed. You can shop for tickets with confidence. And here's the best news. SeatGeek give you $10 off. That's right, free money. SeatGeek will give you $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is use our promo code. Don't use promo codes from other podcasts, you animals.
Do it from ours.
Do it from ours. Otherwise, you're going to have to start paying for this podcast. We know you guys don't want to do that, right? So use it from ours, you animals, all right? Download the SeatGeek app today. Use the promo code FFF, and you get $10 off your first purchase. Once again, download the SeatGeek app. Use the promo code FFF for $10 off your first purchase.
It's really weird because I was looking at going to the game in D.C. for Lions-Redskins.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And they were all $6 tickets, but they were still red everywhere. Everything was just red. It was just like, even $6 is just too much for what this game is going to be.
To watch.
Hold on, though. Think about this. You decided not to pay $6, and think about how much you lost there.
I know.
Not only did you miss out on a football game,
Yep.
you could have taken a selfie with Dwayne Haskins. Which you could have sold for much more than $6 on eBay, and you would have actually made money by going to that game.
You're right. You're right.
Like an idiot now?
I do feel like a stupid idiot.
Idiot. Let's talk about the 49ers and the Packers game last night. The 49ers just waxed the Packers. What an incredible performance it was from them. It wasn't a super prolific night for the two 49ers wide receivers, Deebo Samuel and Emmanuel Sanders, especially with George Kittle being back, plus it's a run-heavy offense. These sort of matchup flex guys, where do you value both Deebo and Emmanuel Sanders going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I love Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, he's exciting.
I mean, he's exciting, and had him as a preseason sleeper as well. Didn't expect this, but I will be honest. I bailed on Deebo Samuel I bailed on Deebo Samuel once they made the trade for Emmanuel Sanders because it's just like, look. Like it's a run-heavy offense. It's the run-heaviest offense in the NFL, and they've got George Kittle.
Right.
Like, do we really think this passing offense can support multiple pass catchers, given how run-heavy they are? And so far they have. The problem is it's sometimes it's been Sanders, sometimes it's been Samuel. And now that Kittle is back. So my guess is no. As nice as this was with Deebo Samuel, it was one big play. It was the touchdown run. He had just 2 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. He's had 6 different games this season with 3 or 4 receptions. This is Deebo's first touchdown since week 2 at Cincinnati. He's had no more than 50 receiving yards in 6 of his past 8 games. Emmanuel Sanders is starting to get a little bit more healthy. The emergence of George Kittle, or the return of George Kittle, I should say, from injury, obviously bodes well for the 49ers offense and Jimmy Garoppolo, but not necessarily for Samuel and Sanders. And then you think about their upcoming schedule. At Baltimore, at New Orleans, home to Atlanta, an improving Falcons defense, home to the Rams, at Seattle. And so it's sort of a middling of the pack. You don't love it the next 2 weeks. And so I guess what I would say is like, we'll see what happens tonight with the Ravens, but my guess is you're probably not starting Deebo Samuel at Baltimore or at New Orleans. And then you can sort of reassess. And so I think Deebo Samuel's a hell of a player. I think the 49ers got something there. I think they should, if I'm a 49ers fan, if I'm Stefania, I'm very excited about not only the future for this year, but specifically the future for Deebo Samuel. But just hard for me to see him contributing significantly and consistently in fantasy this year, given the other pieces on that offense and how they want to run the ball.
Yeah, kind of akin to A.J. Brown for me, right? Really talented player.
Yep.
Run-first offense. He's going to have some flash games, but there are some considerations like the offense he plays in that might limit you from playing him in a given week. Before we talk about our friend Aaron Rodgers, it's time first for a crappy promo.
It's New York Times bestselling author Matthew Berry with another self-serving, self-indulgent, all-about-me promo.
I don't know why people haven't downloaded the Fantasy Life app yet.
Because they're dummies.
I would think so. That is the only explanation. It is a free app. It is a free app, 100% free app. It's not one of those free apps and then you open up the app and you're like, oh, hey, but it's $5 to see anything you want. No, it's 100% free. From top to bottom, 100% free. The alerts absolutely crush. Listen, the community is great. You can compete against your friends, have some fun there. You can chat as well, have private chats, or there's public chats. You can check that out. Get instant feedback on your team if you're considering a trade, if you want to make a move. Like, the community is amazing. It's really a supportive and fun community. The memes are really funny. But even if you never go into the app, the alerts absolutely crush. I tell this to everyone, and then I get feedback. Like, I say, listen, download it. Give me 3 days. Download it for 3 days. It will change your life. And then once you do that, you will tweet me and you say, like, thank you, Matthew, for continuing to pound the table for this thing because it's amazing. So download fantasylifeapp.com. There's a reason we're at 4.8 stars in the iOS store and 5 stars in Android. Last thing I want to do, Field, is just point this out real quickly for anyone watching on our live stream.
Okay, this is very cool.
This is cool. They sent this to me. It's
they meaning who?
The some of the people that are promoting the Monday night game, the ESPN Monday night game, and everyone knows I'm a company man. So it's my little Cooper Cup. Yeah. So you can sort of see, like, it's got a Rams logo. It's got Cooper's glove.
How do you drink out of that? Do you have to put your hand in the glove?
I think what you do, how you drink out of it is, it's got the number 18, of course. Number 18 on the field, number 1 in your hearts.
Right.
Right, and you just sort of open it up here, Field, and then you just...
You put your Diet Coke in there.
Yeah, exactly. My Diet Coke or something else. I might use this to drink my booze, my margarita. I still have a dream of, like, just, Kathy Lee and holding it, and just us, boozing it up. Field with his craft beer, me with my margaritas.
I could have sworn you were drunk for at least half the shows we've done this year. Were you not?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, this is fun. Little Cooper Cup right there. And you got the gloves. Like, you can't drop it. Can't drop it. It's
just
great.
Like Cooper Cup can't drop passes. You can't drop your mug. Your cup.
You cannot. So anyway, just a little promotion for tonight's Monday Night Football game on ESPN. Ravens, Rams. I'm a company man.
We are going to talk more about Aaron Rodgers and other players that might be kind of in that bust category. Really? Bust? Well, we'll discuss it more on Tuesday's show. We also have, of course, waiver wire stuff, Monday Night Football reaction, and lots of other great content. In the meantime, Fantasy Show will be taped later on today and available on ESPN+.
Streaming all season long. Of course, the Free Agent Finds column. When does that come out?
Later on today on
ESPN.com. And then you and I are back tomorrow. What do you got, Secret Squirrel?
So this week, just to make sure that all of our listeners and viewers know, with it being Thanksgiving, we want to give you guys Thursday and Friday to be able to spend with your families and loved ones. So we're doing a show today. We're doing a show tomorrow. And then Wednesday will be our de facto Friday show. Stefania's going to join us for that show. And then you have Thursday and Friday off to hang out with all your friends.
Two questions there. So when you say, like, you're saying, hey, we want to let you spend Thursday and Friday with your loved ones.
Yes.
Is that your way of saying that we're not people's loved ones?
I'm saying that I'm not spending that Thursday and Friday with you guys. I am with Field, but I love you too. Yeah, we're best friends.
Right. Wait, why did you use air quotes?
I didn't.
You didn't.
You did.
Actually
no,
I was live on video. Like, we can just look back at the tape.
No, but you used actual air quotes when you said the Wednesday show would be our Friday show. You became one of the air quote guys.
You're my best friend, Matthew. I just want you to know that.
Yeah. You know what? I don't believe you.
Wait, so you do believe me? Because you air quoted believe you. So now I'm wondering which one is the right one.
This is so confusing. Too many double negatives.
Right.
We're coming back tomorrow. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, here you screw you. How about that?
I don't have bad breath.
Right. Exactly. No. I really enjoy you as my producer.
Yes.
And by the way, you do a great job on the fantasy show.
No, you're good at axe throwing.
We're back on Tuesday.
You should have stood closer.
We'll talk to you guys later.
Peace out.
He's a fantasy guru in a boat on an island, going full Hainsworth without even trying. Award-winning creations.